Good morning, everybody. It is Saturday, February 10th, 2024. I am Tom Kaczynski. Good to see you all. Hope you're doing well today. And I just decided to come on here. We'll do a quick 10-minute, maybe 15-minute show. I wanted to tell the Putin interview with Tucker, which I watched in its entirety literally the night it came out. I've been watching what other people have commented upon, and while they're making many interesting and sometimes useful observations, I took some different observations, which I wanted to share with you guys. So I hope you enjoy that. If you want to listen in, yeah, I'm here. I put things up periodically, and you can always find me on Telegram at Tom Kaczynski. At least while things are still going on here, I'm kind of winding down and doing this these days, just because the people who listen have already listened, and the people who don't. But it was an interesting interview, and I know my friends would appreciate this. So, if you want to support the work, Venmo, CBC, PRV. Okay. Three things struck me from Putin's interview as things within the interview. I'm going to leave aside, for those of you who've already watched it, his basic thing. I mean, Putin thinks in a long historical term. You have to understand the Russian context. Russia is a country that has been overrun by tribes. And think of it this way. Think of the Sioux Indians, okay? Let me put it in an American perspective. And you have cavalry coming across your plains, other tribes, and you have the European settlers, different groups. So you have a certain defensive mindset. But imagine instead of that, you have the Huns, you have the Mongols. For those of you have the Khazars. You have the Byzantines, you have the Vikings. Lots of groups of war bands come through there and sack these people. And yet they endure, and that is the Slavic way, to endure, because to live on the steppe is to survive. In the same way that America, and coming out of Britain, is largely a maritime culture. We think in terms of trade, we think in terms of how goods move across different services and the comfort of cities. People who live in the steppe think in terms of mobility, of space. They think of land power. They think of things differently. And those lessons are hardwired into the quote-unquote Russian soul. If you don't understand what that is, go read Brothers Karamazov. You can go read about the story of, I can't remember the names. Let's see. It was Vanya, Misha, and then there was one other one. I forget. Vanya being a name for Ivan, and even the names like Vladimir Vladimirovich Putin, right? That means Vladimir, son of Vladimir. That's called a patronymic. A lot of cultures in more traditional backgrounds use that. So they look at things differently. And one of the things that becomes really obvious, and it's the point of this, is the speed, pacing, and depth. Putin said at one point in the interview, and I think this is really telling, that, there might be two hemispheres, but there has to be one mind about the world. And I am no globalist, but the point he was trying to make, because he talked about what the West was, he said America is very creative. And what he didn't say, but basically implied, is we are the emotive part. And it's true. I mean, could you imagine a Russian trying to read a series of text messages, emboldened by different emojis happening at rapid speed, and make information of that? And yet, how much information can that convey? We have very small bits of information that move very quickly, and they have very large bits of information that move very slowly. So they are good at things that require more thought and patience. Hypersonic missiles, they will work through math. I mean, literally, if you look at Russian publications, they just sit there and play math equations in a way that would put MIT to shame. And this is how they operate. But we operate differently, and that's okay. We are creative in certain ways, which, unfortunately, our creativity has led us to believe things that are driving us insane. I mean, I was watching an urban exploration video the other day. Dana likes watching those. And I was thinking, this is archaeology in real time as we watch our cities and the centers of them fall apart. Those that aren't being overrun by migrants. They're being brought in by our very government. There's an interesting video worth checking out. Tom Tiffany, member of the House Judiciary Committee, couldn't get into that place in Tucson that James O'Keefe identified. And why not? Something is happening here where all of us are being replaced and set up for a terrible fall. And why that should happen, America, if you want to destroy the global order, if you want to destroy the dollar, if you want to destroy people and the idea of resistance, you have to destroy America, and you have to destroy its individualism. And mind you, Americans have done a wonderful job of facilitating that themselves. There's no doubt of that. But Putin talking about there being two different hemispheres was interesting, because it plays a big role in a question that Tucker asked him. And Tucker asked him, rightly, he's like, talking about Nord Stream, which, based on the article that had come out about a year ago, what was the name of the journalist who used to cover Vietnam, who had broken the story about the pipeline going down. It'll come to me. I'm going to say something. Anyway, what happened was that, everyone made it go away. And so Putin, has documents. He brings documents from the very beginning. And Tucker asked him, well, why don't you just put out the evidence of what happened? He's like, have you ever tried to fight the American media? It controls all of America and most of Europe. And what he's saying is that we are so deep in a web of propaganda. And mind you, he went out of his way. He even joked about Tucker being CIA, which was a tongue-in-cheek reference that he believes he might be. The CIA did something called Operation Mockingbird. You can look at it. You can look at, what is it called? The Munt, what was the name of the act? I didn't sleep very well last night, so forgive me. Smith-Munt Act, I think is the name of it, something like that. What ended up allowing during Obama's regime for the people to be propagandized by their media. We, as we all see, deal with a bunch of lies that are promoted so quickly and broadly, and so many distractions that you cannot hold an idea. Even the day that interview happened, we have Biden over there screwing up the president of Egypt, his name. All of these things come together, right? And what they make clear is that we've now reached a point where there is nothing you can believe in. And William Casey, former director of the CIA, said as much. He said, we will know we have succeeded on our campaign on the American people when everything they support is false. And we do. And we do. And the rest of the world has a problem, which is that the world is becoming a multipolar order. The internet, ironically, probably facilitated this. The way civilizations had advantages over each other was not just wealth and population, which we've totally degraded our own population, leave that aside, but also in keeping certain secrets and having technological advantages over time. And we put all of ours out there. We called it offshoring so that a certain generation could make more money by having things built in China and other places who learned the techniques, and now, in some ways, they're better at it. They have their own problems. It's fine. It's a different society. It was a historical mistake, but it happens when people are invested more in money than they are in their own folk. And that's something that has been the means by which the West has been led for many, many years. And if the destruction of the dollar destroys these people, then I consider God's just punishment upon them. But I mention this because Putin talking about this, that fighting the Americans in an information war is impossible, is important because information wars are how these are won. If you don't believe me, go. There's actually a good video. The boys at the Duran did this. The two Alexanders, they had Mike Adams and Michael Yon, whose covers a lot of times the people coming out of the Darien Gap up through Colombia, through Panama, and where you literally have the same organization that Mayorkas used to be on the board of, sending them up across the line, the HIAS, it's like Hebrew Immigrant Aid Society or something, All of them are down. They're Catholic charities, and the Great Replacement happens. These are not questions of doubt anymore. These are observations of fact, and people have been telling you a very long time. That's fine. So what we see, and it's interesting, Congress couldn't find a way to impeach him because they're blackmailed. It's easy. It's not hard to understand. I mean, there's different means that could mean, ranging from the really awful to the pedantic, just pure financial, games. But that's the reality. And they said, we're concerned about security. So they couldn't pass a border bill because it was a terrible border bill. So then they just want to give billions of dollars to Ukraine. And even the guy, Zelensky got rid of Zelensky. And he brought a new guy in there whose parents are Russian, whose brother, I think, is Russian, and all of them are just ashamed. But this guy's a headhunter and a mercenary who is known, apparently, for being willing to attack civilians. That's what I've heard from different sources, not just on the Russian side, because I read lots of different things. So we send fire starters over there. Why? We want a bigger war. Why? Because the people in charge would rather burn it down than have a world where they're not in control. And this is the reality we deal with. This is the problem of the psychopathic elite. This is the third point that I want to get to. Putin was making. He's like, who do we negotiate with? I talk to presidents. They say, oh, you could join NATO. We could have this missile defense together. We could have had hypersonic missiles. But the people in charge, the same people who he said were the Bolsheviks, read between the damn lines, okay? They're the ones who are doing this. And there's evil and wickedness in the world. There are people who are not the people they seem. Russia has a long, long history. Alexander Solzhenitsyn, 200 years together. It never comes into English. You know why? It covers who those people are. And the people are the same people who get attacked, 109 times? Okay. This is reality, but you don't know history because you've had lies told to you, and you believe the methods you've been told allow you to seek truth, but even they have problems, I mean, I was sitting there with the wife the other day, and I was talking about the only reason we even know we exist is Descartes said, well, I think, therefore I am, and we're going to stand on that. Okay, that's our explanation for empirical reality. Oh, dear Lord. It's a midwit take. We don't know what we are. That's what I spend my time working on these days, trying to know what I am, because I don't know. Talking into the ether here, hoping things come out of it. That's what I do. But it was a good talk. It demonstrated, beyond any shadow of doubt, the history of this affair, the culpability of the West in it, the awful role that NGOs play in foreign affairs, which he talked about, how even going back 20 years, how you run into CIA operations where they're trying to destabilize regimes, because that's just what we do. But it doesn't make America safer. So who does it make safer? Well, you look at the history of the CIA. They really started to get their power going right about the time the Fed really got ramped up in terms of their financial abilities, when the taxes were up to 90% in the Eisenhower era. And they built their own black budgets. So we have, as we've seen many, many times, a deep state that runs amok. We have a two-tier justice system. Joe Biden's too inept and old and sickly to be blamed for the fact he lets information go. Okay. The rule of law is dead. Doesn't mean law won't be used against you, but it's not ruling. It's tyranny, it's force, it's power, it's suppression. And in the West, you look out there, it's not holding together. The social cohesion is already bad, and you're bringing all these people by the millions as a destabilizing force. The dollar will break. The reason it hasn't yet is because there's nothing in place to replace it, and because, frankly, it looks like the world is trying to manage the fall of the United States. Because they know that we are the mad dog that's rabid and might nuke everything. Because the people who run this are the same people who promote the Samson option. The same people, in fact, the same exact people, even down to the citizenship, because they're dual citizens, that are, just willy-nilly have been killing people in Gaza. And I know some of you say, why don't I support Israel? Because those are not the biblical Israelites. They're not. There's no question of that. It's more likely you and I are. Migration of peoples into Europe and the way people were pushed along the maps. And who's been targeted? It's biblical. Look at who's persecuted. The one thing you can't argue is that those people are persecuted. They sure as hell aren't. They enjoy every privilege you could know known to mankind, including having different governmental status. When, people were, upset about that, every governor rushed to say, hey, we're going to go ahead and protect these people. You can't say anything about them. But, the rest of us who've been here laboring for decades, losing every opportunity to anyone else for any possible reason, we're left to rot. We're left to rot. And our government hates us. And at least people realize it. That's a good thing. That's a good thing. They don't join the military. Why would you? I mean, eventually that will be used against you. It's a problem. So what do you have to do? You have to hope for the fall. And I know that's dismal. And I'm not doing anything. I'm leaving. You know that. I've invited others to come, but people don't have the courage or the ability or the time. It's fine. You have your own situations. I have mine. I have just enough energy to do one last throw of the dice and get myself out of here with my poor sick wife. And I'm tired of fighting, and I'm tired of explaining, and I'm tired of saying things when people just don't care. I mean, I wish we lived in a system where we had people in charge who had some responsibility, If we could make NPC-free voting, maybe you have a little test and see in school if people could see things and, you could actually, the ability to mental image in your brain is the single biggest indicator of who is and who isn't an NPC. And by that, I mean capable of abstract feeling rather than just being told or, having this empathetic response or being like that huge, you see a flock of swans going around, like this. And what ends up happening is everyone follows along because it's herd behaviors. And we are running into herd behaviors, but our herd is being let off a cliff. And other countries are inoculating themselves. They see it. It doesn't mean they're good actors. It doesn't mean they're allies. It doesn't mean they care about us. But at least they care about their own. And that's more than you can say our leaders say about us. So that's dismal. But it was an interesting conversation. I'm a historian. Most people couldn't make it 10 minutes, and I know that. But there's reasons why things happen. There's reasons why things are the way they are. There's reasons in the United States, too. You can't tell the story. It gets shut down. People have noticed, though. So you have to do things through hints and insinuation. But I will tell you this. Whether you believe in insane conspiratorial theories or you're the most pedantic midwit out there, the dollar is breaking because it's lost its utility case. And what's coming up next, I don't know. The LNG thing was interesting out of Texas. We talked about that. I was reading an article, or rather, some things that came out of Disclosed.tv talking about how the Rockefellers wanted the LNG set down. Just so you know, the Rockefellers are essentially the American branch of the Rothschilds, just so you have the connection. So what is the play here? Enforced austerity? Make things bad, cloud pivot on steroids, the idea where you make things so bad that you can get everything through at once? I don't know anymore. I don't want to be near it. I know all of us, I know me especially, incredibly expendable. So you give yourself distance and separation. But I don't think it's safe to be in America anymore. I don't. And I stopped caring for this country a long time ago because the state of America makes the nation of being an American impossible. It subsumes all nations beneath it. New England has disappeared. It's just a homogenous zone. I can hide in the echoes in the wilderness. That's what I do. Technology has done this to us. Not because it's a tool, but because we worship it and we allowed it to degrade our capacity. Read a book. Read something long form. People don't want to hear that. How do I survive the next thing? And then they come back to the crazy kook when things go nutty, just like they did, during COVID. I ran Coronavirus Central. My audience was mostly Karens. It's just funny. And they wanted safety. There is no safety. Life is a wild ride. Safety is in the Lord's arms afterwards. Ask for that. Seek for help for that. Seek something more than this world, for this kingdom is not ours. It was conquered long ago. Even Christ recognized that. So, what do? Well, don't help support the war. Don't get it bigger. I don't think voting in the other option is going to fix that. It's probably less bad on a day-to-day basis, but the media is already changing the story because they'd be more willing, I think, to have him in charge. Because I believe, and I know some of you don't, that's fine, that he is an escape valve, a Pied Piper. And he's very good at it. He's very entertaining. I fell for it for the first time. I'll own it. But you're going to get Javanka. You know what that's like. It's life. And try to do something separate, but you look at how they go after Amish for raw milk and stuff. It's like, they're not above making examples of us for being good and decent people. So, how do we preserve ourselves? Well, I've always thought that the beliefs and the blood of a people make a people. I hold to my belief in the Lord, although it's hard sometimes these days because, like a lot of you, I look at this world and be like, Lord, why is this coming? But I look at what we do and I'm like, how can it not? And I try to reach out to people and talk to them and guide them toward things, but we all have commitments which keep us bound to one another in this trap, where it's very hard for us to escape. I respect that. Family's family. But the suffering that's going to come when we go from plenty to deprivation is already hinted at. And how you want to deal with that is something you have to accept. Because they're going to come after you for your agency. They already do. And they're going to come after you for your stuff. It won't necessarily be the government. The government will weaponize the people against you. Why aren't they complying? How are they hoarding food when we don't have any? All it takes is one little famine and your neighbors will be a lynch mob against you. Because they'll target the target they think they can get. This is history. We have lived in a very genteel time up until now. It need not be like that. This was not necessary where we're going, but we're getting there. Read the stories of what happened in Russia in the 90s, in the Balkans, how people had to survive. And plan. You have some time. I believe you have until the election, and I don't think the Russians want an immediate war at this point. I take Putin's word at that. But the West does. And they're going to keep throwing more provocations until there's no other choice. Maybe they'll nuke London. The way the Russians think of things, they think of the city of London as the center of all this mess, and I can understand why they would. That bank has a long, weird history. David Kinniston, go read it. Those are the things that we're dealing with. I think I've covered enough, but I want to say to each of you, this summer is an opportunity to pick where you're going to be. We are making that choice. I encourage you in the strongest terms to do the same. What seems like a massive sacrifice now, if you can avoid chaos and disruption that you are not prepared to live in, even if you're well-armed, even if you're well-trained, even if you're ex-military or LEO or whatever you are, if you can avoid that, that's how you survive human history. You don't win the game, you get to the end of it, hopefully without such a miserable outcome that you can find some value in it. And then you seek a higher kingdom that the Lord has for us. Heavenly Father, I just pray that blessing be upon everyone this day who needs it. Ask for help for my wife and for those who are suffering and who are sick, and the wisdom to find truth if there be any in these words. In Jesus' mighty name I pray. God bless all of you. Have a good one. I'll be back. I am Tom Kaczynski, the Venmo CVC PRV. Go get the books while you can. Some of them are pretty good. You know, Coming Civil War, Incoming talked about some of the stuff. You guys have a good day. I'll be back with you as things go along. God bless.